Hey, what's up everyone, Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be watching A Ghost of a Chance. So Ghost of a Chance is a 2011 Japanese supernatural comedy, and in Japan it's actually known like Once Over a Blue Moon. That would be more the literal translation of the original title. But in the West, it's been retranslated into Ghost of a Chance. The film is directed by Koki Mitani and basically stars Eri Fukatsu, who plays Emi Hosho, a lawyer who is essentially trying to live up to kind of the legacy of her father, who is kind of this very respected, very renowned lawyer, and essentially is working on a murder case. This gentleman was accused of murdering his wife at this inn deep in the country, and she basically has to go investigate because according to him he could have murdered his wife because at the time she was murdered he was being pinned down in his room by the ghost of this samurai who was, and he couldn't move, and of course naturally a lot of people hear that and like, yeah, that's not gonna hold up. So she actually goes to investigate and goes to like this room, this suite that nobody ever uses in the hotel, and essentially basically finds that the samurai is real. The samurai is Rokabi, I'm going to try to say his last name correctly, Sarashina. He's played by Toshioki Nishida, and essentially she gets this great idea that say, hey, let's bring you back with me, and you can testify. The problem is that not everyone can see him. How convenient. So she has basically, through a series of elaborate methods and means and tests, she's able to prove to the court that he is in fact real and he is in fact there, and essentially then proceeds to basically testify on behalf of this man who's been accused of murder. And it becomes quickly a case of like the century about, the first time, the dead will be not on trial, but like as part of a defense trial. And you come to find out that there is a whole, echelon, if you will, of ghosts and the afterlife, and how that's a whole society in and of itself, and there's rules and regulations that go along with that. And it kind of shows you that by having a ghost testify, that it is kind of breaking into new ground in both our world and the afterlife, that both sides have issues with this kind of case. So it's a question of like, should this go forward? Should we still do this? But ultimately she's able to kind of prove her point, basically say that if you allow me to do this and I can prove this can work, that both sides will kind of like, okay, prove yourself, but if this doesn't work, this is all going to come down on you. So it's this really fun story of it's a really sweet story of her and this ghost essentially become very good friends, and you realize that all he really wants is to basically be able to cross over, to pass over, and for that to happen, he needs to have like a shrine or like some kind of memorial built in because he was wrongfully accused of betraying his side in a conflict, and therefore he was beheaded as a traitor. And he's basically trying to, and through this trial, clear his name as well, not just the the name of this man that's been wrongfully accused of murder, but essentially clear his name and regain his honor, for that is the only way he can reach nirvana, as he states it. So otherwise he's just kind of stuck here. Aside from that, it's a pretty funny film because it plays with a lot of the tropes of like ghost stories. For instance, they asked him, well, why did you harass this man? Why do you harass the guests that stay at this hotel? And you see this kind of stuff in a lot of like ghost films where the ghosts are always kind of messing with people. And it's always kind of done for just to kind of up the scare factor. But beyond that, it's never really explored, because usually in a movie like this, it's a scarier film, and you just kind of go with it because you expect to be scared, you expect creepy stuff to happen. So you don't really question when in actuality, it's like, well, if you're still you when you die, and the only difference is that, well, you're now non-corporeal, why would you suddenly be this looming, menacing figure when in real life, you might have been a kindergarten teacher or whatever. And I mean, and they kind of ask him that question, and he's like, I don't know, it's just kind of what ghosts do, isn't it? And like, almost he himself had kind of bought into the notion of what a ghost is supposed to be, not because he is now stricken with this knowledge or this drive to do it, but just because, like, well, growing up, he probably heard ghost stories too, and heard that ghosts are these spooky, scary things. And, you know, the few people who have seen him probably freaked out. So he kind of figures, all right, I'm a ghost. Ghosts are supposed to be scary, so, ooh. And that's really the extent of it. He's just doing it because, well, what else do I have to do? And I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. So he just kind of goes along with it. But he himself doesn't even really take it too seriously, because to him, being a ghost is literally just a state of being. He's still who he is. And there's a great point where she even asks him, like, okay, I need you to come with me. And he's like, okay, well, you're going to drive or something. He says something to that effect, and she asks, well, can't you just teleport there like you're a ghost? And he kind of looks at her and laughs, like, what are you, nuts? He's like, you know, I'm a ghost. Because for him, being a ghost is so normal. So aside from him being dead, you know, and still able to interact with the living world, to him, there's nothing else unique about him. So the fact that she thinks that because he's a ghost, he has all these other incredible supernatural abilities is just laughable to him, because he's like, no, I'm basically just non-corporeal. That's the extent of it, you know. So there's a lot of great banter back, and they both kind of fill the holes in their lives, because, you know, she is, you know, trying to live the memory of her deceased father, and, you know, feeling like she's failing in life, feeling like she's just not cutting it, and she wants to desperately, but feels like she can't. And he's basically telling her, it's like, you're one of the most incredible people I've ever met, because the fact that you're going this far for this case, that you brought me, a dead guy, involved, and you're creating history, and you're becoming probably the most famous lawyer in history for what you're doing, and yet you see it as just, you know, you doing your job. You're just seeing it as like, well, my job is to clear, you know, my defendant, and that's what I have to, my client, that's what I have to do. And I have to do, you know, whatever means present themselves, and the ghost presented himself, and that's what she's doing, not realizing that by doing so, she is doing something incredible. And he even sees that, you know, he's the ghost, and yet he's looking at her in awe, saying like, wow, you have no idea how incredible you are, how special you are, and how lucky this guy is to have you as his lawyer. So it's a very sweet story, and it's a very fun story. And you both kind of realize that, you know, in their heart of hearts, they've both been very lonely, because there's been something missing in their lives. And it's been basically someone who just kind of gets them, kind of just gets who they are. And for the both of them, they kind of develop this really touching friendship, and they have a lot of fun together. And it's a sweet story. There's a lot of kind of wacky moments, but it never gets to the point where it almost gets overly silly, because I feel a film like this, you could clearly see how it could dip into that territory, and it never really does. I mean, it flirts with it a little bit, and it is fun when it does it, but it's never to the point where it's just kind of like cringeworthy, silly. It still takes itself weirdly seriously where you wouldn't expect it to, and that's why I think this film really works, because it's a film that you could be otherwise just very, you know, dismissible. You could just laugh it off, but it doesn't really like wink at the camera. It basically says, you know, we know that from the outside looking in, this is pretty ridiculous, but once you're in it, we're going to make you believe, because a lot of the characters don't believe her. You know, she has to prove that that he's real, and I feel in the way she goes about proving it, she does a very kind of intelligent, even scientific ways. She is essentially, the character, the filmmaker, is proving to the audience that you can take this seriously, that you don't just have to feel like this is just ridiculous. So it's kind of has this duality to it, whereas what her character is trying to prove to the other characters in the film, that he's real, and the director is trying to prove that you can buy into this. You know, you don't have to feel foolish for buying into it, and he does a pretty remarkable job of doing so. So I actually watched this on a plane coming back from Tokyo, and just because, you know, I was most all the, like, you know, I mean, I like films from all over the world, but, you know, a lot of the big Hollywood blockbuster films on there were films that I had already seen. So you know, and then I was looking, oh, here's a nice opportunity to watch some films that maybe haven't popped up on my radar. So I watched 3 Japanese films, this being the last one on there, and it was just really just taken by it, and just what a sweet story it is, what a fun story it is, and it just kind of makes you feel good. It's one of those movies where you don't really understand why, but you just feel good after watching it, and all the characters are just a lot of fun, really interesting, and just they really just have a good time with the material, and I think that's the main thing, is that everyone involved with this film looked like they were having fun with it, and you have fun with it. Again, this is a movie that could have, well, you could have made this a horror movie, I guess, if you really wanted to, or you could have made this movie just so dumb and overly ridiculous that it's just kind of just like, oh god, you know, one of those kind of movies. We've all seen those, but it finds that sweet spot right in the middle where it's fun when it needs to be, but there's some dramatic moments, and there's moments of, you know, real character development, and you realize that even though this is a story with a ghost in it, it's a very human story. It's really a story about connecting with each other and finding friendship and places you didn't expect, and really just kind of cherishing those friendships. Not really questioning how they came about, but just appreciating that they are there. I mean, she found a really good close friend in a ghost. And rather than just dwell on the fact that, well, he's a ghost, she just leans into the fact that here's someone who understands her, who gets her, and who's there for her and really listens to her, and vice versa. He's finding someone that is not... I mean, initially she's freaked out when she realizes he's a ghost, to be honest. But very quickly she sees past the fact that he's dead and sees him as a person. And even when she's getting annoyed with him at certain points based on, you know, things about him that are supernatural, it's less about the supernatural aspect of it, and it's more about, you know, him as a person. And she sees him as a person. And I think that's what really makes him taken with her, is that, wow, she's not seeing me as just the dead guy. She sees me as me, and no one's seen me for me in, you know, a very, very long time. And I miss that, and that's the vibe you get from that. It's like, wow, I miss being treated like a person, not, you know, just the undead. So, or I guess the dead in his case. So, again, it's a sweet story. It's a fun story. It's well acted, well directed. You know, it's a well-made film in general. So there's that, and it's just a lot of fun. And I don't really like a lot of ghost stories. So I'm not, you know, I don't know. When it comes to things I'm supposed to be scared of, I like more like flesh and blood things. So probably like my favorite ghost movie of all time is Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro, because, you know, that film, he's kind of famous to have said that, you know, it's not the dead you need to worry about, it's the living. And this film, I think, one of the reasons I like it so much, now without spoiling anything, it kind of really is about that. Like, the ghost you think you're going to be, you know, scared of, it's not the ghost you have to worry about. The ghost is just there haunting the place. He's not doing anything to anyone. He's there to maybe shine a light on members of the living. That might be the real problem here. Because the living can still hurt you. The dead are, you know, hey, they're done and over with. They can't hurt you anymore. They're just... I mean, he can interact with people, but he's not the problem. He's not out there trying to kill people as a ghost. He's you know, that's not his game. So both these films make you realize that on the surface, yes, you see a ghost and you think scary, but once you dig just a little past that, you realize, yeah, the ghosts aren't the problem. If we accept that ghosts are real, well, then it means they're everywhere, and they're not out there causing trouble. They're not causing traffic accidents. They're not causing homicides. You know, they're not stealing kids off the street. They're not causing arson. It's always the living that are doing these things. So you quickly realize that, you know, if ghosts are real, well, they're really not the problem here. It's perhaps why they became ghosts in the first place, and that is because of, you know, the living. So again, it's a fun story, it's an interesting story, and it's one that I highly recommend, which is why I'm talking about it today. So, A Ghost of a Chance. Have you seen it? If so, what did you think? Do you watch a lot of Japanese films? Or, again, this is coming also, if you are a Westerner, do you watch films from, you know, Asia in general? It's Japan, South Korea, China, what have you. You know, and if you're Japanese, obviously, do you know, how does this film really, because as a foreigner, you know, I saw this film when I was really taken by it, but how did this film really resonate in Japan? You know, I'd be curious to get you know, someone who's, you know, from that country, how they felt the film worked. Was it well received? Did a lot of people like it? Is it the kind of film that does very well over there? I'm very curious, because again, I really, really enjoyed it. It was a pleasant surprise, and I found myself smiling a lot while watching it. If you have not seen it, I will put links in the description section below. You can pick it up, check it out, give it a watch, come back, and by all means, give me some of your thoughts because I love these kinds of movies that, you know, make you feel good like that too. Despite my love of gloom and doom, every once in a while I want to crack a smile, as much as I hate to admit it. You know, not every day is dark and cloudy for me, even though I like to put up that personification. But you know, sometimes I need to take away from my I need to take a break, just a quick pause from, like, you know, my Lovecraftian-esque, you know, gloomy view of the world, and, you know, watch a fun film like this. And again, it is fun. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace!